Welcome to the All's Authors podcast. We're so glad you found us. We're the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. I'm Mary Ann Shuko, a registered nurse, author, and dementia daughter.
And I'm Christy Byrne-Yates, a licensed educational psychologist, dementia daughter, Al's author, and coach focused on the sandwich generation. Please join us for bi-weekly episodes with our authors as we talk about their dementia journeys, sharing intimate details and painfully obtained knowledge to help others currently on that path.
We hope these stories offer you comfort and support as we strive to break the silence and stigma surrounding a dementia diagnosis.
May one of our authors speak to your experience.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
My name is Andrea Kuchar, All's Authors member and author of the memoir titled Embracing What Remains. I am excited to be one of the moderators of a new online book club collaborating with the wonderful organization Aging and Amazing. Every month, we will feature a book from the All's Authors approved collection. At the end of the month, we will meet online and host a group discussion of the book, as well as invite the author to join us for a question and answer session. Please know it's not a requirement to have read the book to be a part of the discussion. Our goal is to simply share and open a conversation on a topic that is so important for the aging community. This is a wonderful opportunity to share our stories, connect with readers across the globe, and shine a little light on the effects of Alzheimer's and dementia in our families and communities. All's Authors strives to help others through this journey and remind those on this path that they are not alone.
For more information, go to agingamazing.com or check out the show notes for this episode of Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Ann, and I'm the founder and manager of All's Authors, the global community of authors, writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from the personal experience to light the way for others. Welcome to our first All's Authors Live presentation for 2024, Dementia and the Arts. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us. I'd like to introduce some of the members of our team who are with us today. Christy Byrne-Yates. She is the author of Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation, which was based upon her caregiving journey with two parents with dementia. And she is my podcast co-host and producer and is helping me to host this event. Jean Lee is author of Alzheimer's Daughter, and that is about her story of caring for two parents with dementia at the same time. She is a founder and manager at All's Authors. And Vicky Tapia, who is also a founder and author of Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia, shared her story of also caring for two parents with dementia at the same time. And I also wanted to introduce Sue Fagaldi-Lick, who is poet and author of Gravel Road Ahead and several other volumes of poetry, and is currently preparing to release a new memoir about her caregiving journey with her husband, and is pulling together our poetry anthology, which we will publish later on this year. So we are here tonight with 6 very special guests who will discuss how the arts in all of their various forms can help caregivers bring meaning and engagement to those who are living with dementia. I want to introduce Tom and Karen Brenner, who hail from Chicago. Tom is a gerontologist who specializes in creating dementia care programs that are strength-based and positive-leaning. Karen is a Montessori educator who co-founded a Montessori school for children who are deaf. They work together for the past 20 years, researching and implementing the application of the Montessori method to dementia care. They've published 2 books about their work, The Montessori Method for Connecting to People with Dementia, and You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello, The Montessori Method for Positive Dementia Care. Welcome, Tom and Karen. And Mary Crescenzo is joining us from California. She's the author of the Planet Alzheimer's Guide, 8 Ways the Arts Can Transform the Life of Your Loved One and Your Own, and playwright of Planet A, which is about the inner world of Alzheimer's. She's a recipient of a 2022 Mods Award for Innovations in Alzheimer's Care, which honors her pioneer work in arts engagement through her multidisciplinary approach and development of care through the arts. Katia De Luisa is here from Costa Rica. She is an artist, expressive arts program designer, freelance writer, and author with 20 years experience working with those living with dementia and their families. She's the founder director of the nonprofit The Infinite Mind Dementia Project in Costa Rica and author of Journey Through the Infinite Mind, The Science and Spirituality of Dementia. And we have Mark Rothman, MD, joining us from Kentucky. He is triple boarded in internal medicine, geriatric medicine, and hospice and palliative medicine. He is a physician executive and founder and president of the Dementia Spring Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3 venture studio that invests in visual and performing artists and innovators who are changing the prevailing narrative of dementia and bringing joy and creativity to the dementia community through their work. He also recently became the CEO of Lizzie Care. And last but not least, we have Trin Rose Seeley here from Arizona. She is the Firebird Book Award-winning author of 15 Minutes of Fame. One photo does wonders to bring you both back to solid ground. She's a professional photographer and sought-after musician. Trin has supported the lives of young children, those with special needs, and elders with Alzheimer's and related dementias for over 25 years. All of her projects and offerings are designed to empower caregivers and those they care for. So thank you all for sharing your time with us and your expertise and experience. I'm so appreciated. So I wanted to start first by asking Mark, who happens to be our physician here tonight, a question. Are people living with dementia truly lost?
Nice to see all of you. It's a real pleasure to be here with All's authors. I come here as a representative of the Dementia Spring Foundation, and we've recently become partners with All's authors for 2024, and also with the Bob and Gina Fund, who does such great work for photography around dementia. So it's just really an honor to be here with all of you. Looking forward to tonight's conversation. We start out with this question that I get all the time, right? Which is are people with dementia lost? And I believe it or not, an hour and a half ago, I was with somebody who said, I was with your Aunt Sandy and she seemed really gone. And I'll be honest with you, as a physician, I think of words like lost and gone as not being very helpful to me in describing things. I mean, people use words like that for all kinds of weird situations that have nothing to do with dementia and healthcare, right? They think someone who's got a strange belief is totally lost. They think people are off the reservation. They must be gone. And I really find that lost and gone are not really very human things. And I am all about the fact that people who have dementia and other diseases, by the way, are still very, very much in front of us and are still very much alive and human. And to speak of them as being lost and gone just somehow belittles for me as a physician what it is we're sort of trying to do in general in medicine and in life. And so I really don't ascribe to these kinds of terms. I try not to react too negatively when I hear them. I like to generally think of people who have dementia as, they're on a journey that's very different from the one that we all are on who don't have dementia. And it's taking them to a different place. It's taking them to a place that's hard for us to recognize. I like to think a little bit less about sort of where they are. Seems very accusatory to decide where they are and that we can decide where they are. I like to think about where we are, because when we're with people with dementia, it's just hard. It's hard to figure out how you need to be. It's hard to figure out how you need to react today versus yesterday and versus tomorrow. And sometimes it's us who are completely lost and us who are completely out of our minds and gone. And so I generally don't think of people with dementia and Alzheimer's disease as lost, including when they have ceased being able to use speech, which is only one mode of communication. We'll talk about music, we'll talk about art, we'll talk about color and light and song and physical things in a little while, which is relevant to this conversation about, people who are often accused of sort of being gone. It's because they can't answer all of our questions. Well, who's asking the questions? It's us. So I find that those words are not so useful to me. The last thing I'll say in this regard, and trying not to be on a high horse, about it, is I am very, very interested as a physician and as a geriatrician and as an expert in end of life care about preserving dignity, about avoiding suffering and preserving dignity. And so I could never preserve the dignity of somebody who's gone or lost. Doesn't make any sense. So I like to really think of the question in terms of, let's just appreciate that they're not where we are. They're on a different journey than we are on. They might feel further from us this year than they did last year. And that just asks the question, well, what is it that we can do for them? And how is it that we can maintain their dignity and their sense of personhood to the best of our ability and avoid any suffering and accidental inhumane harm that we cause, thinking they're lost, by the way. That doesn't excuse us from what our responsibilities are. So I find those things get talked about all the time, and it's so hard for people. And I know that they're struggling, and that even saying those words aloud is both incredibly difficult, but also simultaneously can maybe get people a little bit off the hook. So I really try to just appreciate where the person who's saying it is coming from and go from there.
Great. Thank you. That was a very helpful answer. Tommy, Karen, did you have anything to add to that? Because I know we've discussed that in the past.
So, Tom, you had a couple of things you wanted to say about people with dementia being called lost.
Well, it came when we were thinking about the topic, my memory came to a game we used to play when we were children called hide and seek. And I think that is one of the basic principles of what we're dealing with, that the person might be hidden, and it's our job to seek where that person is. And we've had some great success with the understanding that we were seeking to engage a person with short-term memory loss or memory loss, and try to discover some feelings that they wanted to express to us. And we created like a bridge, if you will, from wherever they are to the present time. So we're always thinking of how to get a person in the moment.
Yeah, and we, as this discussion brings up, and we're so glad that you all chose this topic. We use the Montessori method and we use the arts to, as Tom said, find that person who's still there inside. And the arts are based on procedural memory or muscle memory. So if you're painting, if you're singing, if you're even reading because your eyes move, and drum circles, all of the arts that we use are an inroad to find those people that are still there inside. And that's become our mission. And we are learning all the time. And we really appreciate being here and learning from y'all tonight as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Katya, did you want to say something on this topic?
There's many levels of consciousness. It's not just brain-generated thoughts. And that's the whole premise of what I teach, is basically we rely so much on our brain-generated thoughts and our outer judgments of how a person reacts to us and their environment as to how gone they, quote unquote, gone they are. I've had a lot of experience directly with people with dementia and in a lot of different stages, and many of them have said that they're watching themselves doing and saying things and they can't stop it. So what is that level of consciousness that's actually observing themselves while they're having a dementia episode that they cannot control? So understanding that person is most likely, I can't say for sure, but at least the ones that I've talked to that have explained that they were in there, they're in there. And it's maybe not brain-generated thoughts as we know it, because brain is being damaged. But I just believe that there's more to the consciousness of a human being than just brain-generated firings.
Thank you. So one of my goals in this program is to not only talk about the different art forms that have been used successfully to engage with people with dementia, but also to show people who are here tonight to learn how they can incorporate them in their own caregiving. So I was going to ask Mary, how can we use art to connect with people who have dementia?
Well, of course, there are so many forms of art, but the fact that we can use our innate ability. Anyone has that innate ability to be self-expressive. And so when we meet a person with Alzheimer's where they are, by using fluid guidance, non-judgment, not having preconceived notions what they can or cannot do, we can begin to have engagement with them, whether it's with painting, singing, dance, poetry, reading, writing, movement, all of the forms, even making three-dimensional works, even taking them to a museum or looking at photo books or art books or even family photos, where storytelling then can blossom from there. So if we can be unafraid of ourselves being creative as caregivers and family members, then we can out that door, connect and communicate through, say, for example, painting. They might make a painting. You might ask, tell me about that. And you'll start getting a story. It may spark memories. Singing a song. And all of this is for relaxation as well, and which allows that person to feel comfortable within the art movement. Because art is play, and we all have often forgotten how to play. And so connection and communication could come and does that innate ability, even in those with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Because we have that ability, we all want to express ourselves. Why not use art as a common ground?
Okay, thank you so much, Mary. Katya, I see you smiling while Mary's speaking. Did you want to add to that?
Trin's smiling too, because we just had that discussion. We met recently online, and we just had that discussion. Yeah. There's always something that they can do to express themselves, because creativity is never lost in the human being until we leave this world. So it's a matter of finding what their abilities are and providing the play tools, because it's really about play. I love being with people with dementia. They just even out my world, believe it or not, because when they're playing, you just play along, and you become the child also, and they're just having such a good time, and you're having such a good time, and no matter what problems you have in the world, they just stop when you reach that place with them. And art can take them to that place, and it also takes you to that place while you're doing it with them. So I'm 100% with what she said, 100%.
Trin, did you want to add something?
We're saying all the things I would say. It's just wonderful. My main thing that I have to offer this group today is to say it's our turn to start the conversation, to bring out the best in a person with dementia. You know, that's what I learned over the many years that I did my work. And I'm doing a new set of classes right now that the magic happens every time you give people an environment that's rich with music and stories and photographs and art. It gives people a chance to engage with things that are regular and normal that they've always done all their lives. My friend came to play guitar with me today, and he's a church musician. He's in deeper dementia now, and he just remembered every single song we played. He would say, well, I don't know if I know that one. I don't know if I remember the chords. And I would just start to play, and he would just start to play. And he played every song comfortably after his body memory kicked in. His mind was saying, no, I'm not sure, but his body immediately played If I Were a Rich Man, da-da-dee-da-dee-da. He sang the whole song and knew the whole thing because it's in his heart and his body and his mind. And it's a beautiful thing that if I was not sitting there, he might have talked himself out of it for an hour or walked away, but he didn't. He had somebody there to say, strum, here we go. Let's just do the motion, and the memory comes right back. So it's our chance to start the interaction in a positive way. As Dr. Rothman was saying, it could be easy to say, well, she doesn't know anymore and she doesn't remember now. And she'll only talk about, did we go get paper towels at the grocery store yet? And we talk about that all day. Well, then don't talk about that. Talk about something else and offer some other beautiful thing, a photograph of a hilarious trip that you all took as a family, a song lyric that's right there in your environment. It's either sitting on your piano or sitting with your guitar. Having those instruments out and available means that people walk into them and start. The muscle memory is right there because it's always been there. So me starting the conversation helps people join in, and it brings out the best in people.
I would like to add that even if a person has never made art before or in their life said, I don't like art, and that's probably because somebody told them they couldn't do it. Even persons with dementia can all of a sudden enjoy art or just want to do it. So don't worry about if your family member has ever been an artist. Just open the door from yourself and for them and see what happens. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, we see a lot of evidence of that, in our organization. There have been people who have said that and discovered new talents and skills that they had, and I think a big part of it too is as, we leave our childhood behind, and as adults, we no longer participate in things like that because we're too busy. So when you're older and later in life, you don't have to go to work or you're not raising children. Now you have time to indulge in other activities that you might enjoy. People discover that they have all of these secret talents. Tom and Karen, could you talk about some of the modalities that you've used in your work and the reactions that you've gotten?
It was just wonderful hearing Trin and Mary and everyone sharing. What we have seen too is that the procedural memory, the muscle memory, tends to be less affected and by dementia. And we do readings, elder reading circles. And what we do is we take stories that people with dementia have told us. We put it in a great big font and we make it into booklets. And then people who have dementia are reading the stories of other people who have dementia. And that creates so much conversation. There's so much resonance. And we also do poetry circles. And we do read short poems aloud. Everybody has a poetry book that we've created in their hands. And just as a little aside, Tom and I have discovered how important it is to put something meaningful in a person's hands. It seems to sort of ground them. And we try to find things that we know that they love. If a guy loves baseball, we give him a baseball mitt. If a woman loves to garden, we give her herbs in her hands. In the poetry circle, we don't just read poetry. We make a poem together, and everybody has a chance to say a line of the poem. And there was this one time, there was a woman, and every time it was her time to contribute a line, she'd say, pass, pass. So we went around and around, we made this poem, and then we were going to try and find an ending. And the woman who wouldn't contribute said, I have the ending. And this was the ending line. And glory shone all around.
That's stunning.
Yeah. And Tom, you want to talk a little bit about the drum circles?
Yeah, we've used drum circles to a great advantage. And the amazing thing about a drum circle, it's not just hitting the drum, of course. It's the fact that there's a unity. And if you're leading it, if your arms signal louder, the person gets louder. If your arms signal down softer, then they hit softer. So this type of communication is an understanding that goes beyond words, of course. So what you see sometimes, you have to understand that we're operating at these different levels. And to me, it's just fascinating. It's just fascinating because there's so much to explore. And we say to ourselves, there's a reason for this, and we want to find out what that reason is. We never really, because we don't deal with what the drugs a person might be using or what kind of sedatives. We never even get involved in any of that. So we work around that because we're like I say, communicating on a different level. And it's just fascinating because we're the ones that need to find out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so that's a key, I guess, to unlock. Another thing I want to mention about art, and it is true that if a person was turned off by art when they were younger, maybe, like we've had farmers that'll say, I'm a farmer, I don't know how to paint a picture. And then all of a sudden, if we can get them started, that's the basic hurdle, is to get a person started. And once we get them started, it's off to the races. Mm-hmm. They're artists, and they're amazed at their own ability. And there's another thing that was connected to that. One time we had a person that was very advanced in dementia. What she did is she painted a house, very simple house. And then all of a sudden she came up with a story to the house. And the story, she had characters. It was just unbelievable.
The house, she drew on her house, she started making fire. And she said, there's babies in there. We've got to get those babies out. And she had this whole story about this fire and the family and the house.
It just blew our mind because we're thinking, before we engaged her, she was sitting there not really doing anything. Yeah. Uh-huh. So there is a lot to this.
There is
absolutely marvelous, and there's a reason.
I just want to add one quick thing. We do a lot of singing, as I'm sure Trent, of course, you'll get this. We do a lot of singings. We've even set up choirs and made big font with hymns if we're in a religious affiliated care home, or we just sing. Great American Songbook. And as you mentioned, Trent, people who sometimes can't even speak will still be able to sing and remember all the lyrics. And the one thing I wanted to mention about this there was a study done in Sweden, and they were studying choirs, all ages, all different sorts of people. And what they discovered was when people sing together, their hearts start beating in the same rhythm. And I found that just fascinating. But
Katya and I were talking about the very same thing. Katya, do you want to say more about that? Thank you. That's perfect. That's a perfect segue to just what is even on the deeper level of what's happening with caregivers and advocates and people with dementia. It's a beautiful thing to sing together.
Mm-hmm.
I was just writing in the chat about someone had asked Rita, actually, I know Rita too. Somebody had asked about how to get them involved, because usually when you ask them, do you want, let's do art, they always go, no, I don't know anything, no. Well, I discovered that it's really easy to get them involved if you say, listen, I just learned this really great thing. I took a workshop and it was so much fun. Would you come and sit with me? I want to show it to you. And so then you start to do the art, and then you have some materials ready for them, and then you say, well, what do you think? Should I put some blue here, or should I put some green? And as soon as they make a decision, as soon as you've got them, they're captured. So then you can say, well, here, do you take the paintbrush and you help me put it on it. Having them accompany you it puts into effect their mirror neurons. Mirror neurons in the brain actually make the brain start to work like they are actually doing what you're doing. So now it's just a matter of getting, the brain's already working while they're watching you doing it, just as if they're doing it. So now it's a matter of getting them hooked in by handing them the paintbrush or asking the questions. It's almost worked almost every time that I've ever tried it that way. So it's worth a try.
Brilliant. And so Katya, that's so good too. What we were talking about is that idea that when I am singing with people with dementia, then we are in the same wavelength, we're in the same sphere, we're on the same page, we're synchronized, rather than me being above or different or better or anything. We are all equal and engaged and connected. And that's a real scientific principle of being synchronized.
Yeah, I've done a lot of study on how the brain works and why, and even taken it deeper. And there's a frequency. Everything's a frequency. Sound is a frequency. So when you get in sync with the person with dementia has a very irregular frequency. They're up, they're down, they're emotionally all over the place. So it's often very hard for you to get in sync with them. Music automatically does that, because it's the same frequency. The song's the same frequency. So as a result, you get in sync with the person. It's very important to do that, where you're in sync and comfortable, non-judgmental, like Mark was saying, to get in that flow with them. And you'd be surprised how the communication changes, how there's much more communication when you go in. It's basically going into their world. Yeah. And how you can tell you're in sync with them is activity. There's noise around you. You don't hear it. There's something going on the side of you. You don't see it. So when you can actually be so totally focused and in sync with that person, suddenly your world will stop. And then there's a bridge that's been created. And music's one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah. It's an authentic connection that allows people to trust the environment and trust the people in it. And then it takes it to the next level of being able to accomplish tasks, if it's bathroom or shower or eating or connecting and feeling comfortable. If you have an authentic connection with a real reason to be in touch with each other, not just artificially, we have to fuss through the day. No, we're connected and we're feeling good and happy and comfortable. Then daily tasks are accomplishable and joyful. Here's an example of a private session that I did just last week, a few days ago. A woman who only speaks Spanish, and I'm learning. I have a teensy bit of Spanish. I held her hand because she was very agitated. She was kind of shaking her hand back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I just let her shake my hand back and forth. I mirrored where she was. I didn't hold her hand and try to stop it. I just rocked with her. She furrowed her brow. I furrowed my brow. She said, "Aye, aye, aye." And I said, "Aye, aye, aye." And I mirrored it right back to her and just joined her exactly where she was for several minutes when I first came in the room. And then I took a deep breath. I slowed my breathing down. And she did the same. She saw me. I was with her. And she trusted that. And her breathing slowed down too. And then I kind of smirked and smiled, and she kind of smirked and smiled back at me. And then we sang a song. It's a Spanish song that means she woke up with the sun in her heart. Tiene el sol en su corazón, va brillar todo el día. She's going to shine all day. And she said, tiene el sol en mano. I have the sun in my hand. And then we drew a picture. I had a sun, moon, and stars because I love the sun, moon, and the stars. And I wrote that in Spanish, sol, corazón for sol for the sun, luna for the moon, and estrella for the star. And she said, she pointed to herself and she said, estrella. And I said, estrella. She was a medalist in sports in her country of origin. And she immediately said, star, I'm a star. I said, yes, you are. And so we just laughed and were connected the rest of the time. But I could have thought, well, I'm just not going to connect with this lady. She's all agitated. And nope, I just joined her at first. So she knew I was with her. And then we moved the energy another direction and really connected in such a beautiful way. And she knew herself, she knew who she was, and she expressed that to me. Beautiful.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful story, Trent.
It's like it's a beautiful example of co-regulation too. Like that's just a great way to, when you join with somebody and then when you were able to move her by you slowing down, that's a great co-regulation skill too.
That's getting in sync. That's what I mean by becoming in sync with the person, is that there's a communication that just starts to flow. And it's amazing when it starts to happen because both people feel it. That's a beautiful story.
Mark, did you have anything that you could add from your experiences with Dementia Spring?
Well, I've just been listening to all the fantastic comments you all have made, and I should have made a list. But, I'd like to just return for a second to this question of, the person who wasn't an artist before, they say, or they, you assume that. The person who maybe wasn't creative before. And when I think about this, and we think about this a lot at Dementia Spring, we're very biased. All of us are incredibly biased. We have this feeling that when people are less able to speak and answer questions that we pose to them, that they are sort of like they can't, how could they be creative? They can't even answer my questions. And the truth is that's nonsense, because for several reasons. I'll give you a scientific reason. The brain is huge. You think of the brain as very small. The brain is enormous. There's like 2 billion cells in the brain. Okay. It's like outer space. If you think about outer space, that's how big the brain is. Speech is in a really, really discrete part of the brain, like really discrete. And everything else is in the other parts. And there is so much creativity in children long before they can speak. I mean, think of a 2-year-old who's sitting there in your living room, your grandkid, your kid, your nephew, who's, doing something with a pencil and paper and mumbling, blah, 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 and having a great time. We assume they're being creative. We assume that's creativity happening in front of our very eyes. But for some reason, we assume that someone with advanced dementia or moderate dementia can't be creative anymore. It's a shocking bias. It needs to go away. That's what we at Dementia Spring are very, very focused on, trying to break this nonsensical notion that late and middle stage dementia is about wheelchairs in nursing homes. That's not what it's about. That's not how it's being lived in America today or globally. And so I think that's a really important thing to get rid of, right? You can be creative, and it doesn't matter whether you are a concert pianist, and many of you have met concert pianists who have dementia, or whether it's someone who literally hasn't drawn a painting since they were 6. But to the points you're making, they grew up in a world with music. They grew up in a world with song. They grew up in a world with color. And it's our jobs. And Tom, I love what you said. Like, we have to go find them. We have to go figure out where they are and find them. And I'm thinking a lot about all these various programs across the country that we highlight on Dementia Spring. So, Judith Kate Freeman songwriting works up in the Pacific Northwest. She has rooms full of people with advanced dementia creating songs, the way you were describing creating a poem together a few minutes ago. There are books. People are asking, how do I do this? How do I do this? Lola Frankel in San Francisco, she's really studied if you think about sort of a coloring book or an art kit, what is the minimum? How do you distill it down to something that can be reacted to the way Katya, you described? How do you just sort of prompt a little bit of activity? And she's created all these incredible things that work, where all you need is a pen and a little bit of a prompt, and you're off to the races. You're off to the races, and who knows where it'll go. And the Day by Day project in Ohio, where they, to the point that someone made about the environment. I can't remember who made that. It might have been you, Sue. So they use silent disco technology, because one of the things that's very difficult about doing this work, and I'm sure you all have created it, and Trin, your story is a little bit about that, is that the frequencies of people with dementia inside their brain are very, very distorted. They're very, very irregular. I think that was a nice way of saying it. I'm going to use that with my patients and my families, because they're on frequencies that are changing all the time. And they have trouble self-regulating. And it's fascinating when you take out the outside world, the noises that are coming from the kitchen, the noises that are coming from the table over there, the noises that are coming from the radio that's still on all day long behind there, and you isolate the music. Oh my God, it is just shocking. So if you think of that original Music and Memory video where they put the headset on that first person, a decade and a half ago, and we do that all the time now at the Day by Day project. And so the last comment I'll make is the original question to Mary was, how do you do this? How do you access this? And one of the things I'm very excited about is that, there's a lot of different ways to access this. It's not only on your shoulders as a caregiver to do everything anymore, right? There are online programs. There is stuff you can pipe in through the computer and through the television set. There's all kinds of help out there. There are virtual art therapists, music therapists, dance therapists. I mean, endless. And for those of you on the phone who do that work and have not been profiled on Dementia Spring, send me an email. We'll get the word out about you all, because you're all doing fantastic work. So I think about this more from an access perspective. How do you get folks who are not part of this community, who are not in a vibrant arts community, who are feeling very lonely and isolated and don't know where to start? How do we get this to them through digital means, through communities, access organizations, through things like Dementia Spring and All's Authors? That's the real challenge, because it's all happened at the grassroots. I mean, it is everywhere in this world. This creativity is blossoming, and we really need to bring it to everybody in all those families somehow.
And isn't it hard to see that happen over the last, let's say, decade? I mean, when I wrote my book, it's about music, stories, photographs, art, and bringing those things, helping bring people back to themselves through those things. And it was kind of an unusual thing to say, like, well, that's not enough. Well, actually, I would rather do that than fuss and fight for 5 to 20 years with a person. And there will be medical challenges and there will be things to navigate on that score. But if you have an authentic connection with the person that you're caring for, whether they're your spouse or your sister or a friend or a neighbor that lives next door, or someone that you can chat with online because you're long distance, you're going to have more satisfying connection and more energized and more able to accomplish daily tasks with both ease and joy.
Mark, when you mentioned about these things are happening all around the world, it makes me think of the World Health Organization, which has recently done deep studies on art and health. And the more people read those studies and understand around the world, the more we can see that this is happening and how we can do it. I would like to mention in relationship to this, combining the arts. For example, you could play instrumental music in the background while someone's drawing or painting. It's a calming effect. There's a focus that's created. Or if you're singing or listening to music, we could sway, clap, even dance to incorporate this to enhance the rhythms and the mood. You can just find ways to put the arts together in interesting ways. Now, of course, if this is distracting and not a calming effect, then you switch your mode. And what about when there's anxiety, sustained anxiety going on? What can you do? Be patient. Choose another art form.
Mary's just dropping out a tiny bit, but yes, that's why all art are valuable, and looking at the person's eyes to see if they're responding to it. If they're responding to it, keep doing it, and if not, shift to something else.
I'd like to mention, I started working with dementia because I was hired by a nursing home to do an art activity that was all-inclusive. All-inclusive art activity with people with dementia is like asking to go to the moon. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what kind of an art activity they could all do. And then I decided that it was a small nursing home, 20 people. I decided to get volunteers and create companions so there would be a one-on-one workshop. And I incorporated collage making, which I thought, hey, well, that's easy. And they would go through the magazine, and I developed a process to keep them focused on the magazine and the conversation. In other words, the person who's with them is talking all the time, conversation, asking questions, pointing, using their finger as an indicator. Very, very important that you just don't hold up something and expect them to be able to find it in the deluge of sensory overload that's within the whole room. You have to point to what you're talking about. Use your finger as an indicator. And I just want to tell you one story, because this was a story that changed everything from an art activity to a picture communication therapy. And Mary was visiting James in the nursing home every single day. He'd been in there for 7 years, and he just wandered from place to place and mumbled to himself and never made eye contact, which is common with some dementia symptoms. She still visited him religiously every day, but she really doubted that James even was aware that she was there. And when I asked her to come into the class with James, she said, I don't think he'll sit still long enough, but I'll try. So she got him into the chair, and she started looking into the magazine and holding it up. She had to hold it up in his line of vision and pointing and talking to things. And I had taught them that to look for the signals where they're interested in a picture. And then you ask them, do you like that? That's all you say is, do you like that? And then you see if there's a continued interest, or if they signal yes. Then the companion cuts out the picture, hands the picture to the person while still talking about it. Oh, that's a beautiful dog. I've had a dog in my life. Have you had dogs in your life? Oh, you did. Oh, what was your favorite dog? So then you're starting to create this whole conversation using the picture as the prompt. Then when you put it in their hand, you pat the paper or the journal. I used to make journals out of these collages, and the conversation continues. It's constantly talking about the visual prompt, and then they find a place. And I've had very, very late stage people, I mean, just really late stage, actually push the picture like on a Ouija board. They just keep pushing it slowly, and then they lift their hand. They actually find the place, and then the collage becomes theirs. because they chose the pictures. They usually choose the picture, the color of the poster board, and they choose the positioning. The companion is just doing the conversation and talking out, and it's igniting memories. It's waking up that brain while they're looking at that and listening to the conversation. Mary started to cry in the middle of our class one day. She'd taken 2 classes with James. Miraculously, he sat the whole hour. The whole hour. He never could make eye contact, but he did look at that magazine intensely. And she says, I just can't believe this. I said, Mary, what's wrong? And she said, it's not wrong. All the pictures he picks are things that he's done in our lives together, and they all related to their life together. And she said, but these words, I did not want to cut them out. And he kept touching them. And I'm going to show you what it says. All right, it's backwards, but it says, I'm okay, I'm alive. I'm okay, I'm alive. In the very last stages of dementia. And she was hysterically crying, saying, I didn't even believe that he knew I was here. And that's when I discovered that this process was a very, very powerful way to help revive memories, help to communicate. And it's so simple. You can do it with the grandchildren. You can do it with your, just you and them. You can do it by yourself and have them watch and then get them interested. Oh, do you like that picture? I had a whole process worked out. And then I partnered with the Alzheimer's Association, and we did it for several years across the country and at international conferences. It's so easy. Try it. But you have to be able to use your finger as a pointer, and you need to talk about those pictures, because those pictures relate, like Mark said, there's 86 billion neurons in your brain, probably more, because now neurogenesis is proving that you can actually create new neurons. So there's all that information is in there somewhere. It's a matter of finding it, and the pictures will actually help to prompt those connections. So anyway, I had to let you guys know about this, because it's such a simple thing to do at home. Do it with the grandchildren. You can all do it together, and suddenly they're back in the family, and everybody's playing together. So
that's fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing that. So many wonderful comments and ideas and strategies. I hope people are able to take that with them tonight and implement them at home with their loved one or wherever that may be, and reconnect. That's the point of the whole thing this evening. Christy, did we have any questions or anything in the chat?
Most of the questions, it looked like some of our speakers were actually watching them, so I really appreciate that. And I think, Dr. Mark, you answered one that was really important there, that got asked about, what if somebody wasn't necessarily artistic to begin with? And someone else asked, and there's great conversations in here too, so I love that people are really engaging in this. The only other one was something about what about a person who can no longer read or write comfortably, and that was their happy place. So I think in hearing some of the things people have said, trying other modalities, that may not be something that is easy for them right now. Although I will say there's another ALS author and another podcast you can listen to that Marianne and I did with a woman who does reading to connect, and so that was Susan Ostrowski. So if you look through if you are a podcaster, Marianne and I had a fascinating conversation with Susan Ostrowski, who does reading to connect, and she has put together literary materials that are really, really accessible along the lines that, like Katya was talking about, really getting away from some of that noise. So it's very direct. And so I loved what you were saying, Katya, about, eliminating all the distractions and pointing and guiding to a certain extent. And so that's how you can engage. But so for the person, Lori, who talked about the person who can't read or write as well anymore, I might look at that, but also some of the questions. And Trin has a response, but there's other modalities you can introduce perhaps. So that was the only other question I think that did not get touched on to some extent. But go ahead, Trin.
Yeah. Try again, try a different modality, and even be the one. We were talking about mirroring, right? So do the writing for them and write something and read it to them and show it to them and see if you're surprised that they can actually read it. Or sing them a song, but have the lyrics and hand them the lyrics and be surprised. Perhaps they're going to sing it. This is what I was talking about in the beginning about my guitar playing friend who wanted to talk it through and was going to lose him, not play at all until I started just strumming the guitar and singing. And then he just played the whole thing. His body remembered, his spirit remembered. He didn't have to talk about it, but he thought he did, but he just knew. So be surprised, be curious, and try different things and be the one delivering it to them. Thank you for doing all the writing that you've always done. I always loved your poems at the holiday time or for birthdays or for special occasions. Thank you for that. Thank you for doing that for the family. And it's just like you're giving them back what they've given you.
I think it's important also to read anything they've written back to them, because it helps. One of the major problems with dementia is they feel like they're losing their identity because people are looking at them like they're strangers, and they're losing pieces of their past. So they're losing their identity. So if they're going to talk to you, if they're, say, for instance, they can't read, but they can talk to you, create a journal. Create a journal and do it on a computer. Because I have done this also with the collages on one side and what they said on the other side. In big letters, I put it on the computer and then it becomes their book. This is Betty's book. And it's a journal which is a spiral bound sketchbook. And you can put their drawings in there, their paintings in there. They believe me, they will recognize their book, their own book. And if you put a cover on it that says Betty's book, Joan's book, then and also maybe put a picture of her when she was younger, because often they don't recognize themselves. It helps them with returning to their identity. So even though they can't read, you'd be surprised how much they can read. They may not be able to read today, but they might be able to read tomorrow, or they might be able to read pieces of something. And if it's their own words written in exactly their own words, you'd be surprised how much they recognize and how much they can read, even if you think they can't. So I just wanted to throw that in there. This is an exciting group. I'm loving this.
Can Tom and I say something that we haven't talked about? Okay. One of the modalities that Tom and I use is humor. And people say to us, how could you work in dementia? It must be so depressing. And they don't believe us when we say, no, we laugh a lot. And I'm sure you all have had the same experience. So what Tom and I do, and in our belief it's important to put something in a person's hand, we have cards with really corny jokes. And really corny. And on one side is the first part of the joke, the setup, and then you flip the card over, and then you got the punchline. And it doesn't take people long when they're doing this, and they read it out loud. They read the setup, they turn it over, and then they get the punchline, and people laugh. Mm-hmm. And Tom, do you want to tell them the joke that kills in every care home, memory center, adult day center we've ever been in? This is the number one joke. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, the joke is on one side it says, what did the bra...
What did the top hat say to the bra?
Okay, see.
Sorry.
Okay, there we go. What did the bra say to the top hat? I forgot it.
All right, I'll do it. You do the punchline, okay? So on one side it says, what did the top hat say to the bra? You turn the card over and...
It says, you go on ahead. I'm going to give these two a lift. and everybody laughs.
That kills.
But it is amazing, the sense of humor again.
Yeah.
It's there. Again, we just want to find it. And more often than not, we can engage people. And here's another thing that's fascinating. You know, years ago, when I was in graduate school, I was reading the fact that engagement over a certain amount of time was not likely. And since Karen and I have been doing this work, the arts enable us to engage a person with dementia much longer than they thought you could. Mm-hmm. And it's right in front of you. It's just the fact that people thought there was no way we could engage. And then using the arts, of course, we have a fascinating path to take. And it always leads to long engagement until a person says, I'm a little too tired to do this anymore. They get up and leave. But it's most definitely more than 15 or 20 minutes. There's no doubt about it. So that has a great deal of meaning in a person's day.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And unfortunately, our time is up. We actually went a little over. So I'm glad a lot of people stuck around till the end. So that's really encouraging. I just wanted to do some parting notes and say thank you for attending this All's Authors live event. Details for future events are always posted on our website and emailed to our followers. You can be among the first to know everything new at All's Authors as a subscriber to our weekly newsletter. And be sure to visit our blog, podcast, bookstore, and shop at allsauthors.com to find more resources for your dementia journey. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We share a wealth of resources there. And most importantly, remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an All's Authors podcast. For more details on this episode, please see the show notes. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to it on whichever platform you use to listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information on All's Authors, please visit allsauthors.com. While you're there, be sure to browse our online bookstore, where you will find hundreds of carefully vetted books on Alzheimer's and dementia. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please email your thoughts on the podcast to allsauthors@gmail.com. We are a 501c3 charitable organization, totally reliant on donations to do what we do. If our authors' stories move you, please consider contributing to our cause. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony.
Hi, I'm Susan of All's Authors. When I was a caregiver for my mother with dementia, resources to educate and offer support were hard to come by. All's Authors believes in the power of storytelling to support and encourage those impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia. Custom Caregiver Collections is a customized collection of memoirs, novels, caregiver guides, children's books, and more. This collection of well-vetted books comes displayed in a beautifully crafted wooden tabletop bookshelf with All's Authors branding. Custom Caregiver Collections supports our goal of bringing real books to real people in real places and are perfectly suited for senior care communities, senior centers, doctors' offices, memory cafes, and professional or personal libraries. If you or your organization is interested in ordering or building a custom caregiver collection, we can guide you through choices of books written in many categories to support your needs. Want to build your own book collection? Contact us at allsauthors.com/CCC to get started.